Okay, so we're going to talk about mango propagation in South Florida. Now, I am not a nurseryman. I am a general horticulturist, but I teach a lot of grafting classes. And one of the things that I will say that if you want to do a small boutique mango operation or a small grove operation in Florida, you cannot wait for commercial nurseries to produce your own trees. And the reason is because most commercial nurseries in Florida are not going to produce, you're not going to have the trees available that you want to grow. So knowing how to propagate your own trees is really the only way to get what you actually want in order to do your growing operation. So one of the things that I didn't mention in the last talk is that if when you're doing a boutique operation, whether you're doing mail order or whether you're selling off your porch or whether you're selling at farmers markets or anywhere else, you can't have things that are commercially available that you're selling from your small farm and be successful, right? So I can't be selling Palmers. I can't be selling Kents or Kits or Champagnes or anything like that because they can get those in grocery stores and it's not what they expect of us. So I have to have all of our new varieties. And I also always want to stay one step ahead of my good friend Gary Zill and my friends that are all doing everything on any of the other farms as I want to have new things. So you have to be able to propagate your own trees. And that's what we're going to talk about because things have changed in the grafting world because, again, what's going on with our climates. Okay. Look, in order to do good, in order to do anything, the whole key to doing specialty mango varieties is clonal propagation, right? We have moved, but you would be surprised how many people want to start doing mango operations and they want to start growing mangoes from seeds. And it doesn't work. Okay. It doesn't work in order to make an operation work like that. So graftage is the most efficient and reliable way to do it. But because many people can't graft, you would again be surprised how many people want to talk about doing tissue culture with mangoes or do air layers with mangoes or do cuttings with mangoes because it's not as specialized a way to do the propagation of them. If you all can go anywhere in the world and show me an orchard propagated by either cuttings, tissue culture, or air layers, I'll buy you a beer. Okay. Because you're not going to find those. Okay. You can find a few trees every once in a while. I have a tree in my yard that's done by air layers, and I take people there and show it to them, and they go, wow, wow, wow. And that's what it means. It's just a freak of nature. That's all it is. It's not going to do me any good. All right. So, seedlings don't come true. They're always inferior. They're usually inferior, let's say. Horticultural advantages for grafting are very important. So the question before about size control, keeping a proper small stature tree. The only thing worse than breeding and breeding varieties is trying to breed rootstocks. Okay. Rootstock breeding is one of the hardest things to do in the world on any crop. And and because of that, it's very hard to find good work on rootstocks and to find the right proper rootstock. But if we had a consistent dwarfing rootstock on mangoes, it would be a game changer. But we don't. So one of the things that we do, the horticultural advantages of being able to pick the right rootstock is very important. So I personally on Mango Men Homestead, we use about 5 different rootstocks that we've collected over the years. Gary Zill has a couple rootstocks. Different people have a couple rootstocks. But again, the horticultural advantages, you need to have rootstocks, scion, it changes your growth. It gives you precocity, uniformity, disease resistance, fruit quality, novelty, flavor and quality one of the big ones about grafting on the proper thing and doing the proper making a proper tree. Another thing we use grafting for is to save varieties and to renovate varieties, right? I basically use grafting in order to put a place mark when I collect things or I get things given to me and I have nowhere to put them. I'll graft them onto a tree and park them there, right? So that I can come back and get them later when I have rootstocks and can make the trees. Because that's what happens a lot of times. People come and visit you and they bring you different varieties and you have to find something to put them on. So let's talk about rootstocks a little bit for Florida. We can talk all you want about rootstocks and we can have a wonderful esoteric discussion about all the things we would love in a rootstock, but we don't have it. So what do we use? We use turpentine. That's typical of what we do. Everywhere in the world, they tend to use a turpentine-like rootstock in terms of mangoes. And what is a turpentine? It is basically the quintessential mud. All right. It is the genetic lowest common denominator of a wild type mango that's adapted to the local conditions. So that's what you want. That's what we use in rootstocks for the world over. So in Mexico, they use different local varieties, mango de chupar and just basically turpentine looking things. In Venezuela, they use hilacha. In Colombia, they use azúcar. In all over the world, they just use something similar to a turpentine. Now, the reason turpentine is important for us is it's adapted to alkaline and acid soils. And so it's very adapted to our soils, and it's adapted to alkaline groundwater and some salinity. And also, it's just super adaptable to everything we have. Now, you will hear about people, you heard me talk about using piva. People use saber. I use saber as a rootstock for some varieties. I use 13-1, which is an Israeli turpentine-like mango that is tolerant to salt. But if you grow a mango in South Florida on a 13-1, it grows. I actually use 13-1 because it tends to make my trees grow like serpentine. They grow like this, and they're very good for making them onto espaliers, right? Which would be, in the end, where we should all end up with mangoes anyway. We should be growing mangoes like vines. It'd be better, more efficient, and all that sort of stuff, but we're not there yet. All right. So right now, we plant turpentines, we grow them, and they work. Now, it's, by the way, all the Florida, all the I'd say 95% of the mangoes available for sale here in Florida come from one nursery, and that's our friend Gary Zill. Okay, so Gary Zill produces most of the mangoes that are resold in all the nurseries you get in Orlando, everywhere else. All the nurseries you see come from Gary's nursery, and those are on turpentines that come from a non-disclosed location, because if I told you where they came from and who he got them from, he'd kill me, because it's very hard to have that many turpentines and get a deal going like that. All right. So anyway, you didn't hear it from me. I didn't say it. Didn't say it. They can put bamboo splinters under my fingernails. I'll say nothing. All right. So anyway, okay. Because again, I'm not a commercial nurseryman and never have been, do not want to be. All right. But what I do is propagate my own trees. So, sorry, I use veneer cleft grafts, and that's what most people who are smaller growers like me, that's what we do. If you're a commercial nursery, you're using chip budding. That's just more typical, and that's what you have to do to be efficient for material. And they have controlled conditions that I do not have, and they do all that. And I'll show you what I mean by that. There are, no matter what you do, however, the whole idea It's not that complicated on grafting, is you got to get your cambiums matched up before your trees die. So you have to get your cambiums matched up, whether you're doing um, bark grafting like that, cleft grafting, it doesn't matter. You got to match up your cambiums, get them to live, get them to heal up, to keep growing and keep going. It's just many different ways to do that. So this is what has changed for those of us who are doing grafting for your own, for in a flexible way for your own orchard. And that is, when do you graft? I used to tell everyone, I'd say, okay, you graft starting in about May, and you graft through the summer, and then stop sometime right around Halloween. That was kind of typical, because we're grafting when the night temperatures are above 95 and the day temperatures at about 80 to 90. The problem is nowadays that the night, and Dr. Crane talked about this earlier in this meeting. What has really changed are night temperatures. And it is hot at night much earlier in the year. And then it gets hotter in the summer at night than it used to get. And so we have changed our grafting times based on that. All right. So now I start grafting in March, and I graft up from about March up till about 2 weeks ago. And then I pick back up at the end of the summer, when you start to get those first nights that start to moderate, right? And so that would be like towards the last week of September is when I start grafting again, and I'll graft all the way through the fall. And this makes a huge difference, because so many people, when it's that hot at night, your trees are respiring. Everything is respiring too quickly, and they just run out of energy before they can heal and grow. So now, again, this is not when I'm talking about commercial nurseries. Commercial nurseries have air-conditioned greenhouses and controlled lighting and all of that kind of stuff. I graft, that's my porch. I mean, that's my driveway. And we graft there. That's not me. That's my son. My hair is longer than that. But anyway. So once you know when you're going to graft it, you have to be able to have healthy rootstocks. They have to be active, pest-free. You fertilize about a month before, and you keep them watered. Again, everyone who wants to do grafting, they think it's magic, right? And it's not magic, but you have to have your rootstocks healthy in order to make this work. You also, the one thing I did want to point out, one of my jokes is, when do you graft? And that's when you have the scions and the rootstocks ready to go. All right. Because don't wait to do it tomorrow, because you won't. All right. Sorry, I had to make my joke. On the scions, again, you want active, healthy. You want to keep them at about 50 to 60 degrees, and you don't want to freeze or expose them to heat. We wrap our scions in parafilm nowadays. Always, I get my scions, I wrap them in parafilm. A parafilm wrapped scion will last for upwards of 20 days before you need to graft it, if you keep it at about 55 degrees. Even a little warmer is better. I don't like to go. I like to be around 60 is what I like to keep them at. And the other thing is, we don't, for doing veneer grafts or cleft grafts, we do not use any special treatments. And we're not using lanolin or anything like that. And you always have to be cognizant of matching up your sizes of your scions and your rootstocks, right? And we do keep sanitation is very important. So we keep our clippers and our knives sanitized in order to be successful. Grafting materials for Whenever you do grafting classes, everyone wants to bring all sorts of things to a grafting class in order to learn how to graft, or, to graft. They bring razor blades, they bring hunting knives, skinning knives, kitchen knives, grafting tools. The internet is full of many grafting tools and all that kind of stuff. I don't typically partake in any of that nonsense. I use clippers, grafting knife, keep my grafting knife sharpened with a sharpening stone, grafting tape or rubber bands. That's pretty much all you need. And you don't have to use those materials. You can use plastic bags in a pinch instead of having grafting tape. The one thing you have to have is you do have to have a good sharp cutting tool, and you have to have a way to keep it, to be able to bind it to your rootstock, and that's pretty much it, right? And then you have to be able to just keep the tree in the right way. So, a little hard to see on here, but this is, and look, there's many different ways to do any kind of the grafting methods we're talking about. So you can do cleft grafts. Typically, in a cleft graft, we're going to grow a rootstock till it's about pencil thick, which is normally about a year and a few months old. And then we're going to graft it like that. A lot of times I don't have that kind of time, particularly as a plant collector. I never had that kind of time. So I would plant mangoes and let them come up, and I would cleft graft into the newly germinating seeds, which is unorthodox, but it works because the seed is still providing energy. It's still providing energy to the whole system. And that actually was very effective way to graft things. You just had to be able to match it up. The nice thing about cleft grafts are quite versatile because of that. You can graft them in various ages of the trees. It's simple to do. That it quickly makes you a tree that you can plant right away. And it's also, but the one setback is it's more destructive to your rootstocks, right? So when you're decapitating your rootstock, you can't reuse your rootstocks quite as readily. Veneer grafts, I'm sorry, my picture here went out of focus. I don't know what happened when the computer did that. It's very versatile, scion rootstock, in terms of size. It gives you better cambium contact. You do have to be better at doing your cuts. You have to be better with a knife. And it's easier so you can reuse your rootstocks. Budding, the only difference between budding and grafting is you're using a single bud. Okay. There's not really, it's the same concepts. That's a T-bud, and you can do them in various different ways. I use chip buds. We'll do T-buds. You can do forkert grafts. You can do any of those single bud methods that you want to do on a mango. But when you do that, you have to have better controlled conditions. You can't just be leaving your tree out like I leave the tree, which is to my point of aftercare. So with aftercare, you have to remove the terminal bud of the rootstock. That's right when you graft it. And then you keep that tree moist. It'll break in about 2 to 6 weeks, and you can force it. If it doesn't break, you then should remove the plastic. You keep the tree, check the tree constantly. That's correct. And the other thing is I keep those trees shaded, because another thing that's changed is we live in brutal temperatures in June now. The sun is brutal. Either that or I'm getting a lot older a lot quicker, because it just seems like a lot more brutal. And it is more brutal on my trees. I'm kidding. I know I'm older, so I know it's brutal. All right. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's any questions.
So we have 2 questions here, which are very similar. So it's about cocktail trees. So do you have any thoughts about having 2 varieties in one root tree, and if that affects the quality and productivity?
Do I have an opinion on cocktail trees? Now, if any of you know, I can see already Jeff Wasilewski laughing. I have very strong opinions on cocktail trees. Don't do it. And the reason is cocktail trees are an internet gimmick. All right. That's the great way. If I want to make money on the internet, I would start doing cocktail trees if I was an unscrupulous person. All right. But I'm not an unscrupulous person, so I don't do cocktail trees. The problem with cocktail grafted mango trees or any trees is that, again, I want to tell you, find me a cocktail tree growing around this community that's serving its purpose. Find me one, and I'll tell you, the only purpose it serves is, again, you go out with your buddy after you've had a drink or two and show them a cocktail tree and you start bragging. That's it. The only thing it's good for, because otherwise it's not horticulturally a sound idea, because one always outgrows the other. So you have to work very hard to keep them that way. You keep them pruned back. And only thing, the only exception is, again, if I'm looking to save, hold a piece of a variety until I can move it to something else, then I'll graft that on another tree. But and also remember that I ran germplasm collections. So if you have a germplasm collection and you have a cocktail tree in your germplasm collection, you are irresponsible and you would be drummed out of any, out of the USDA. I used to be in charge of genetic resources for the USDA. And so, they would have stripped me of my USDA credentials and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you so much. So anyways, strong feelings about cocktail trees? Strong feelings about cocktail tree? Thank you so much. We don't have more time for questions right here. Again, any additional questions that you may have, please add them online.